Have we labeled everything as traumatic as a culture? Everything seems to feel as though it's triggering and it's hard. Have we become so weak as a culture that we've forgotten the word resilience? My name is January Donovan, founder of the Women's School, where I train women with skills to flourish in every arena of life. So today we're going to break down, I believe, such a great commentary on what we have been so accustomed to, this idea of trauma. Now, it is true that there are real traumatic experiences that cause us pain and wounds us. However, how much of it is caused not because of that they're traumatic, but maybe our capacity for resilience has also weakened. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But what we want to ask ourselves is how skilled are we in our capacity to respond when things don't go our way? How resilient are we to be able to bounce back when things are just a bit more challenging than normal? Or have we labeled everything hard, traumatic, anxious? And is our language peppered with things that are not hopeful, but rather harmful to our psychology? It's so important that we take information and sort of pivot it and look and say, where am I in my skill level? Because what we cannot measure, we cannot improve. And so what I often ask women is from 0 to 10, rate your own skill level. 0 to 10, how resilient are you? 0 to 10, how quick are you to pivot when situations don't go your way? 0 to 10, how are you able to manage your mind when things are challenging? 0 to 10, how are you able to be in command of your emotion when things are quite challenging and there's compounding challenges? These are skills. The reason why we are overwhelmed is because we are underskilled and there's no training on how to be a woman, which is a reason why we have a school for women, because just because we're born a woman, it doesn't mean we know how to be one. We need decision making skill, mind management skills, emotional command, boundaries. We need to communicate effectively. Hundreds and hundreds of skills that we teach in the women's school, unfortunately, are not taught in our education system. And we go through decades of education without actually formation, as we define, is taking information and incarnating in so that we become master, so that it's not just living in this knowing state of our mind. It's actually taking what we know and then chiseling our life of discipline and then developing our right mindset and skill sets. So we now take what we know and we become that, whether it's kindness, whether it's eating healthy. It's not what we know that changes us because we know what to do, eat healthy. We know how to manage our health. It's that what we know lacks, we lack the skill to incorporate what we know, and so we can't actually apply what we know. For example, we know what to do, right? To maybe lose weight, but we don't have the skill of managing our time, or we don't have the skill of saying no to ourselves. We don't have the skill of communicating boundaries to people and say, you know what, I can't do it right now because I have to work out. We don't have the skill of maybe planning ahead. We don't have the skill of cooking a healthy meal fast and efficiently so that we don't eat fast food. These are just skills. And so much of what we want in our life hinges on our skill level. So much of our level of overwhelm is often traced back to our lack of skill training, which is why we need to get to the root cause of the challenges we face in our life, because we want to and we desire to flourish as women, and we get to the root cause and we can say, okay, what skill do we need to overcome that root cause? Because it's not just about the trauma and the things that are challenging. We have to be better at equipping ourselves with skill after skill after skill so that we don't go through our life feeling defeated on survival mode and feeling as though everything is so traumatic because we just lack the skill of actually managing that situation. And so I love this commentary that this guy is doing because it reveals the state of our culture. And I think that quote, where strong men create strong culture and weak men create weak culture, is really true. Weak men have created sort of a weak culture. Weak women have created weak culture. I think we're all responsible. And I think what we need to do is to kind of think, you know what? Am I taking responsibility for my own capacity to be resilient? Or am I just blaming everyone else? Or I just think everything is sort of, everyone else's fault and not really my responsibility to train my skill capacity. So let's watch this because I think it's
You
very
don't need a therapist. You need to stop acting like life is a medical condition.
now, sometimes we do need therapy, but it is also true that maybe what we need is skill training and recalibrating our expectation, which is a skill in itself. And we need to start kind of thinking that something is wrong with us and just start asking ourselves, maybe it's not that I'm not good enough, it's just perhaps I'm not skilled enough.
Bad days aren't trauma, and feeling lost isn't a disorder.
Bad days are normal. We all have bad days. It's not a matter of having a bad day. It's a matter of how we look and view our bad day and seek the good in those bad days. There's this idea that motherhood is hard. Motherhood is hard when we don't have the right perspective. There are challenging parts about motherhood. Absolutely. I have 8 children. But if we see things as everything is hard, guess what? We have this part of our brain called a reticular activating system, which allows us to expand what we focus on. So if we think everything is hard, guess what? Everything that we see gives us evidence that life is hard. But if we think hard moments, something beautiful we can harvest from. Imagine if that was our perspective, then maybe we wouldn't feel like we need to be, going to therapy for everything that doesn't go our way.
And not getting your way, that's not oppression.
Not getting your way is not oppression. I love it. This is so important because I have 8 children and I have to tell them, oh, mom isn't fair. And I have to say, listen, it's not fair. If I want, if I'm going to have everything fair for you, I am giving you a false expectation of the reality and you're going to suffer in the world. We have to have this idea that not getting our way is part of actually the way. It's part of how the world is orchestrated. Can you imagine if we just got our way and we live our life where our children got their way, got what they wanted, and that we then live in our sort of adult years thinking if we don't get our way, we fall apart because that's what happens with children, because maybe we didn't develop the skill of how to manage our mind, our emotion, and our capacity to bounce back when things don't go our way, when we don't get what we want, which is the norm. That would be a very, very, very hard life when we fall apart when things don't go our way. Maybe that we were planning to go to the park and it didn't go our way. Maybe we were planning and we missed our flight. Maybe there's circumstances. And so we need to have the skill of being able to say, you know what? Life is happening for me, not to me. That's what we teach in the women's school. Life is happening for me, not to me. How can I recalibrate here? Let me reset my expectation. Let me communicate sort of what the new strategy is. And all that skill level can happen in a matter of 5 seconds. But what if you didn't have those skills and you didn't learn it, you didn't master it? Those 5 seconds could be the reason you could fall apart for the next day and feel like you need sort of, therapy. We need skill after skill after skill because the skill that we have to manage our manage our emotion, learn how to pivot, all actually is necessary in that 5 second period. All is necessary in that moment where we feel like, ooh, something's off. I'm not getting my way. The 5 skills that I need in that particular moment so that I don't become a victim to that situation. And then it creates a ripple impact on our day. It's like our children are, crying and messing up, and there's kitchen that's dirty, and perhaps, we haven't made dinner. We're making dinner in a dirty kitchen, all that. How many skills do you think we need to manage that situation where you're cooking, kitchen's dirty, and you're trying to manage your child? You need to learn to communicate to your child, draw a boundary to your child, clean the kitchen really well, make sure you know how to organize when you're cooking, learn also how to cook with joy in your heart, manage your emotion, manage your mind, and the skill of actually also creating a perspective where it's just food, and maybe I'll be late in the food. And you know what? Even if your child goes, hungry for half an hour because you have, not the end of the world, and it's actually builds greater resilience. And so learning how to reshape our perspective and developing our skill level is so crucial, because we could lose that 5 minute that compounds into the next 5 minutes, the next 5 minutes. And imagine if that's what your day was every single day. It would feel hard. But it's not that it's hard, it's that we are overwhelmed because we're underskilled. And that's how I want to shift a movement of women and saying, you know what skill do I need to overcome the challenges in my life so that I can flourish, so that I can actually achieve the peace, the joy that I deeply desire, and not feel like something is wrong with me and I need to go into therapy every single Tuesday.
And that's Tuesday. People have started diagnosing normal struggles like their psychological crisis, when in reality, life comes with stress, setbacks, and uncertainty.
And that's part of the human experience. And if life did not come with setback, stress, and anxiety, then how could we gain greater resilience if life was so easy? Even I tell my children, you know what? The problem sometimes that I see is that it's too easy. We live in a culture where they're not plowing the field, they're not, getting wood to make fire like it was. And so the physical labor is actually void. Things are a lot easier. They can drive, they can press a button, DoorDash, It's all in our fingertips. And so there's not physical labor that actually leads to a greater discipline. So actually, we need to find opportunities for things that are challenging, which is why I teach women how to dream as a skill set, because that gets us out of our comfort zone. Otherwise, we're going to live in our comfort zone. And what we know is that comfort is the opposite of excellence. And what makes us happy is to live a life of excellence. And I think
That's not dysfunction, that's just being alive.
that's not dysfunction. That's just being alive.
Alive. Therapy has its place, but so does
So,
resilience.
how do we become resilient? Skill after skill after skill. And we go to therapy to unblock ourselves.
At some point, you have to stop overanalyzing every inconvenience.
That in itself is a skill. The skill of being able to process, not ruminate, manage our thoughts, create strategic solution is in itself a skill. We need hundreds and hundreds of skill, but don't worry, that's what we teach in the women's school. We teach skill after skill after skill, and we give you a very simple blueprint so that by the time you're done to our program, you'll understand the different skills you'll need. We still need to master them because it's going to require a lifetime. But imagine feeling as though you've lived your life underskilled. I mean, that's what we need to do. So it should stop with us, because a generational crisis is because there's a generational lack of skill training. And so our children are void of skill. If you don't know how to manage your mind, how could you then teach your children how to manage their mind? If you don't know how to um, communicate your boundaries, how can you teach your children the script of communicating your boundaries effectively, managing your tonality, communicating without feeling as though you're thrown off? Those are just trainings. It's not, we're not born knowing how to do it.
And start handling things like a functional adult. Because resilience isn't outdated, it's just rebranded as toxic positivity.
It's about maturity. Maturity is having the capacity to harvest wisdom from every situation, good or bad, and using it to actually help us, using it then to serve the moment and seeing and seeking the good in every situation. That is resilience. That is maturity. And so when we know how to do that time and time again, and that we compound that with all the other skills that we need, guess what we have? We have what? A resilient woman. And we need to start owning a self image of a resilient woman and not somebody who's constantly triggered, anxious, stressed, and afraid. And we need to start asking ourselves, what are the skills that I need to overcome the roadblocks that I have day in and day out so that I can become more resilient, so that I can train my children to become resilient, because the world is going to then manipulate them, attack them, and they will become a victim to the, I would say, manipulations of the world if they are underskilled. It begins with us. It begins with us women training ourselves first so that we can then offer the training that's needed and inspire our children, our spouse, our community with the grace that is necessary to then manage every situation because we have the skill. And so, what I invite you to do is ask yourself, how skilled are you in your capacity to manage your mind, your emotion, your resilience, your capacity to bounce back, to pivot, to calibrate expectation, to communicate your tonality effectively? And if not, then take responsibility and training yourself, because ultimately a life of excellence leads to greater fulfillment and happiness. And that is how we flourish. The more skills we develop, the more we become a master of ourselves, the more we're able to live in peace and joy, because we are not a victim of the external circumstances and how the world manipulates us. We are in command of our interior freedom. And today, the battle for women is not just having freedom, it's about interior freedom, the freedom to choose our highest good. My name is January Donovan. Welcome to the Women's School.